Welcome to Race Forward's 40th anniversary, y'all. I am so excited. I am Kat Lazo, producer, creator, and host of The Cat Call, and currently co-host of Spotify's daily morning show, The Get Up. It is an honor to be your host tonight because this is a full circle moment for me. My first job actually after college was with Race Forward. I was their digital video producer. And prior to that, I had just been making YouTube videos in my parents' basement. So trust me, when my immigrant parents heard that I had landed a real job, a real paying job, they were thrilled. But enough about how my parents are really happy that I'm no longer living in their basement. We are here to celebrate the 40 years of amazing work that this dynamic organization has done.
My heart was how I learned about organizing.
At Race Forward, we firmly believe in the importance of dialogue around race.
It's like when you actually get back and see all that, it just kind of hit you.
That used to be my room.
The water was came about right here and here.
It's a poor and largely non-white population in the city. Life has not come back, and many have not been able to physically come back.
That conversation, how this is going to happen, is really not just about who's president or who's in Congress. Leaders, no matter who they are only as good as the mandate that we echo up and out to them.
In the next century, we're going to have a chance to build multiracial power and to exercise it against greed and discrimination. I'm here because I want to do that, and I want you to do it too.
We see a lot of the opportunities of just basic human rights are being taken away from undocumented youth. And it's this constant battle of just like being recognized by the system that doesn't want you.
Major outlets including ABC News, USA Today, and most recently the Associated Press have all stopped using the term illegal immigrant.
No matter how many Louis Armstrongs there are, no matter how many James Baldwins there are, we're always going to be looked at differently.
Our police was responsible for killing a young man like in '96. His name was Gerald Hall. In a pretty much similar kind of way.
Broken windows, which is a fancy way of saying aggressively policing black neighborhoods.
It turns out that when a system is out of balance, no one's benefiting from it. Just some of us are paying a higher cost for it.
Systemic racism, is that really a thing?
Now you just have whole swaths of people, particularly in rural areas, that cannot access the same level of reproductive health care.
I think what movement has taught us and what it's taught me is resilience. And so I'm hopeful because we're still resilient.
White workers continue to be on the picket line because of your solidarity and strength.
A giant line of police cars invested. All of them had protesters in there already arrested. A lot of them had injuries.
What are the transformational stories built on the basis of anti-imperialism, of anti-colonialism, of anti-racism?
The only path forward for us as a country to a just multiracial democratic society is us finding better ways to have these discussions and the ability to name it.
Okay, that was a very great video. A+ to the new video producer. So those were just a few of the many things that Race Forward has done to advance racial justice in this country. And this evening, you're going to learn more about Race Forward's work and meet some of the partners joining them to create this multiracial democracy where all of us, no matter if we're wearing high-rise jeans or low-rise jeans, no matter if some of us impulsively just decided to shave half of their head. Yes, a place where all of us can thrive and prosper. Now let's get real, Race Forward. You're getting old. And I don't mean that in like an ageist way. I'm saying the org has been around for a minute. I mean, you've seen some things, you've been around for some things. Think about it. Race Forward was created back in 1981, back when Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president, and we know how that went. It didn't go well for many of us, not at all. And unfortunately, we continue to bear witness to the unjust state-sanctioned murders of people like Eric Garner, Michael Brown, Tamir Rice, Freddie Gray, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and so many other people. The rise in senseless and violent attacks on the Asian community as a result of xenophobia and ignorance. The state capitol was under attack by a mob of white supremacists. And just last month, one coast of our country was burning while the other coast was flooding due to climate change that for too long has been ignored. Folks in Texas scream personal freedom when asked to respond to a personal health crisis, but pass an abortion law that criminalizes a woman's freedom over her own body. Trans people are increasingly being targeted by police, healthcare providers, and other systems due to transphobia. And let us not forget that we are experiencing an actual pandemic that has disproportionately killed so many of us. That is a lot. But here's the thing. With 40 years under your belt, not only have you gone through some things, but you've also gained so much wisdom and so much strength. Because despite Reagan and others who have tried to halt progress over the past 40 years, we've also seen the election of the first mayors and governors representative of communities of color. And to be clear, people of color now sit in these offices. The first Black and the first female U.S. Surgeon General, the first Black chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff, who would later become the first Black Secretary of State, the first Black and first Jewish senators in Georgia, the first openly gay man and the first Native American cabinet secretaries, the first Black, first Asian, and first female VP, and yes, the first Black president. We're talking about Barack Obama. We've also witnessed the first federal holiday in honor of a Black individual. I'm talking about MLK. And this year, we celebrated the first observance of Juneteenth as a federal holiday. So yes, there have been some highs and there have been some lows over these past 40 years. But this is why we are taking out some time this evening to celebrate Race Forward's work to move this country into a future where all of us can thrive with purpose and power. So let's celebrate. In 1981, when Gary Delgado started the Applied Research Center, which would go on to become Race Forward, equity for people of color just seemed a long way off, despite the U.S. now living in a post-1960s civil rights era. Centuries of ingrained systemic racism and segregation were still evident, particularly in areas of employment, education, housing, and criminal justice. Gary saw the need for an organization that would work with community organizers and provide them with tools and resources to drive change within institutions and structures that both establish these inequities and have allowed them to continue. Over the next 40 years, Race Forward would achieve many significant accomplishments, helping to advance us towards racial justice. And some of those accomplishments include the founding of the groundbreaking media publication Colorlines, which highlighted the role of race and voices of people of color that in just daily news cycles generally was ignored by mainstream and even a lot of alternative media at the time. Race Forward created the Grassroots Innovative Policy Program, also known as GRIP, which brought together local groups and policy organizations to advance equity and communities' involvement in policymaking. GRIP's strategy of planning, organizing, and media and policy advocacy resulted in GRIP sites having several local policy wins for communities of color. They've also issued legislative report card on racial equity that evaluated and graded governors and members of state legislators on the responses to legislation that would have the most direct positive impact on communities of color. The report cards focused on 5 issue areas of education, equity, economic justice, health equity, civil rights, and criminal justice. They've developed the first racial equity tool to assess and create equity in policies and programs. They've conducted numerous research findings and reports, including an education justice report highlighting the disproportionate level of suspensions among students of color, and a criminal justice report which would become among the first calls for moving to crime prevention rather than punishment. And let us not forget the Drop the I Word campaign in 2010, which resulted in drastic decrease in the use of the word illegal by media outlets and journalism associations, including the Associated Press, US Today, and the LA Times when referring to undocumented immigrants. In 2017, Race Forward merged with the Center for Social Inclusion, founded in 2002 by Maya Wiley, who led the organization, and Jocelyn Sargent. The merger expanded Race Forward's body of work to include working with government jurisdictions to ensure their policies and practices are equitable for all residents. And lastly, Race Forward created the Banned Words campaign in response to the then President Trump's executive order attempting to stall racial justice trainings in government agencies, contractors, or any organization, including schools that receive federal funding. On his first day in office, President Biden rescinded this order and replaced it with one calling for federal government to advance racial equity and support for underserved communities. In response to this order, Race Forward recently announced its launch of the Federal Initiative to Govern the Racial Equity, a partnership with Policy Link that will provide strategic support, learning opportunities, frameworks, and tools for change for departments and agencies within the federal government. As you can tell by now, Race Forward has always had the audacity to lead with race at the forefront of their actions. We have partnered with grassroots organizations to elevate systemic racism and racial justice in their respective policy issues such as housing, education, transportation, or climate change. This strategy has resulted in many legislative wins that have included racial equitable policies, and have also been incorporated into Race Forward's Race and approach, which addresses both race and intersectionality, demonstrating these concepts are complementary and not competing. By working with different organizers and community groups and people representing the full spectrum of communities across the country, Race Forward has served as an example on how it is possible to work together in an intersectional manner towards racial justice. And the work has ranged from mass freedom, the new racism, a case study of multiracial organizing, and public truth hearings post 9/11 that brought together people across races to tell their stories of how they have been racially profiled. That's a lot of great work for 40 years. And now we take a moment to recognize and thank the man whose vision and wisdom has led to all of these accomplishments, and whose vision is why we continue to fight for this just multiracial democracy as we know it. Gary Delgado, the founder of Applied Research Center, which was rebranded to Race Forward in 2013, is nationally recognized as a researcher, lecturer, organizer and activist on issues of race and social justice. He has spent his life active in both organizing and academic communities, one of the initial organizers of ACORN, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now. Gary was also a lead organizer with the National Welfare Rights Organization and co-founded and served as a director for the Center for Third World Organizing at a time when he founded Race Forward. Gary's career includes over 35 articles and studies on social change practices and a documentary on race and public policy entitled Racing California. He has received many honors and recognitions, including the prestigious Berman's Fellowship for Activists of Color, and he has been recognized as a Hellraiser by Mother Jones magazine and as one of the 61 visionaries by the UNA Reader. I'm sure that you all will agree that I'm very thankful for Gary Delgado, and we have so much gratitude for his imagination, what he has envisioned, and what he has worked towards. And he has put fuel in our bellies to work towards a world that we all know is possible. So please give some love for Gary Delgado right now.
My heart was how I learned about organizing. Race Forward, what's important about this is that they're doing something new to get people thinking differently. Many people did not want us to organize for race. They would say, oh, it's not important, it's not really what people want. They said it was divisive. And that is a real problem that we have to think about, we have to write about, and we have to stand up against.
A just, multiracial, democratic society is possible, but it's not going to be built by itself. We need some help. When our movement has the power, the resources, and inspiration to match our aspirations, it opens up new paths towards justice for everyone. And you can help us build that society that is very well deserved. So it is very simple. All you have to do is text RF40 to 44321. Through our work in government, movement building, policy, narrative, and culture, we are building a foundation for racial equity and justice. So I invite you to join us today by texting RF40 to 44321 and make a donation. No amount is too small or too large. Every gift helps. Once again, text RF40 to 44321 and now make your donation as quickly as you can.
Good evening. I'm Glenn Harris, the president of Race Forward and the publisher of Colorlines. Born out of the vision of our past president, Rinku Sen, Colorlines, our award-winning news site, founded in 1998 by social justice organizer, activist, and writer Bob Wing, American historian, journalist, and author Jeff Chang, now a senior advisor to Race Forward. Combined, their vision was to have a platform to shift the narrative around what it means to fight for racial justice and thrive as people of color in America. Colorlines wasn't just going to be a window to the world we daily struggle through, but the more hopeful world we are building. Originally a print publication published jointly by the Applied Research Center, a public policy institute that focused on race, and the Center for Third World Organizing, which was a training center for community organizers of color. It was founded within the year of 2010 and at its launch as a daily digital publication, Colorlines was named a Webby Award honoree for political blogs. Over the years, Colorlines has earned critical acclaim for its in-depth investigative reporting and its news analysis, and has fundamentally helped to reshape the media landscape, naming racial justice as both central to the challenges facing our communities and essential in building a just multiracial democratic society. I'm so happy that Bob Wing is here tonight to tell us more about the vision, process, and hopes for creating a news platform where race matters. Please join me in welcoming Bob Wing.
My name is Bob Wing. I spent the last 3 years working for a group called the State Power Caucus, which is a grouping of 25 statewide racial justice organizations that do electoral work. I am now a writer and consultant and the very happy grandfather of two of the most beautiful grandchildren that ever graced the earth. And I was the founding executive editor of Colorlines. We started Colorlines in 1998. In the 1990s, there was a renewed upsurge in the racial justice movement in reaction to the series of racist initiatives in California on immigration, affirmative action, and criminal justice. There was also a series of dramatic, brutal police attacks on people, especially in New York. And in the country as a whole, there was outrage over Bill Clinton kicking millions of people, mostly women of color, off the welfare rolls. So we started Colorlines to help build this movement. Our contribution, we felt, was to raise the understanding of racism, its edifices and manifestations, and especially to bring forward innovations in anti-racist organizing and strategy. Colorlines was the first magazine dedicated to racial justice organizing in a long time. We were the first publication to bring to the public the exciting and groundbreaking work of Angela Davis and her colleagues on the prison industrial complex. We were also the first publication to bring to the public the important work of Andrea Smith and her colleagues regarding violence against women of color. I'm also very proud of the role that Colorlines played in promoting the importance of civic engagement as a part and parcel of the struggle for racial justice. Right now, the United States is facing a grave danger of white supremacists taking control of the entire country and remaking the society in their own racist image. We are also facing a grave danger of climate change. The clock is ticking on our ability to avoid a permanent downgrading of the quality of life on Earth. My hope is that Race Forward will play a major role in helping people and organizations and movements to meet these grave new challenges and so that in 40 years from now, we will have swept those folks away and be in a position to be making tremendous advances in racial justice.
Musician, educator, and activist Sunny Singh has thrilled audiences across the world with his fiery trumpet playing and vocals. And tonight, he's gonna bring them to us. As an original member of the Bengali brass band Red Bharat, last year, Sunny launched a new project of boundary-defying Punjabi anthems to uplift and ignite. His first single, Mintari Perabin Nu, premiered on NPR's All Songs Considered and Rolling Stone India. His soon-to-be-released debut album is entitled Chakari Kala, the Sikh concept of revolutionary, eternal optimism. Sunny's music is a reminder that hope love, and devotion are crucial to our struggle and collective survival. So get ready to be uplifted by Sunny Singh.
ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਵਿੱਚ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ बोले सोने हाल सत श्री अकाल बोले सोने हाल सत श्री अकाल ओ नानक नाम चढ़ती कला तेरे भाने सर्वदा भला चढ़ती कला बिच रहंदे बोले सोने हाल सत श्री अकाल बोले सोने हाल सत श्री अकाल ओ नानक नाम चढ़ती कला तेरे भाने सर्वदा भला चढ़दी कला तेरे बाने सर्वदा भला चढ़दी कला विच रहंदे चढ़दी कला विच रहंदे चढ़दी कला विच रहंदे बोले सोने हाल सत श्री अकाल बोले सोने हाल सत श्री अकाल ओ नानक नाम चढ़दी कला तेरे भाने सर्वदा भला
At the heart of our shared movement for racial justice is the leadership of Black and Brown communities who experience the oppression of racism every day and know what needs to change. There are endless examples of resilience, vision, and organizing for the collective struggle of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color on the ground mobilizing to build the world we want to live in. Black farmers in the South have recognized the necessity for community-driven solutions to further prevent the harm placed on their communities by racist policies, while Black and Brown communities on the coast of California are transforming their culture and policies by using their collective power to organize for a better future. Organizers are fighting to end mass incarceration and deportation under a shared vision for community liberation. These are the stories that ground our work and continually inspire the Movement Capacity Building Team to organize for racial justice. The Movement Capacity Building Team envision racial justice movements that are led by Black, Indigenous, and other people of color communities that are self-determined, powerful, and resourced to transform our material conditions. We honor local organizing, history, culture, and context in place. We embody multiracial cross-movement solidarity by developing tangible organizing and policy tools. We work with community leaders and organizations to amplify strategies that build networks and connections for shared learning and alignment. In the wake of so many atrocities, including the COVID-19 pandemic, the pandemic of police violence, the climate crisis, we have been inspired by the grassroots organizing in communities across the country. We are grateful that the generosity of donors to Race Forward in 2020 allowed us to support this powerful organizing and redistribute funds to 14 groups across the country. These are groups like Carolina Youth Action Project that centers abolitionist organizing, Action St. Louis, which is building political power with their local Black community, the Anti-Police Terror Project, which is working to eradicate the violent over-policing of Black and Brown communities. We are grateful for this leadership and continue to learn from and alongside partners in the struggle to make racial justice a reality.
Hello, I am Lori Bazaler, and I have the great honor of chairing the board of Race Forward. I wish that I could say it's so great to see all of our wonderful friends, old and new, coming together for this celebration, but I can't, so I'm just gonna say thank you for tuning in. The 40th anniversary has given us an opportunity to look back at the history of the organization and set our vision for the future. I'm here to share a little bit of some recent history. In 2018, the boards of Race Forward and the Center for Social Inclusion were approached by their directors, Rinku Sen and Glenn Harris, about the possibility of merging to form one larger, more powerful organization. One founded by Gary Delgado as the Applied Research Center, and the other founded by Maya Wiley and Jocelyn Sargent as the Center for Social Inclusion. Both shared a commitment to centering those closest to the pain in the struggle for racial justice. But they'd developed slightly different approaches and skills along the way. For example, we talked earlier about Drop the I Word campaign, which was a successful campaign that Race Forward ran to drop the use of the I word in publications and media. Similarly, the Center for Social Inclusion developed tools that communities could use to change the dominant narrative about race. Those tools have been very successful as well and used by organizers from Mississippi to Massachusetts. CSI was launched in the aftermath of 9/11. Maya Wiley and Jocelyn Sargent recognized at that time that the attacks that we were seeing on the Muslim community in America were just one aspect of the need to shift the dominant narrative around race. They named the organization the Center for Social Inclusion from the writings of Amartya Sen, who talked about the need for inclusion in the fight against oppression. Their intention was to increase the understanding of race and the perpetuation of poverty and oppression, and to do that work in collaboration with communities who could then use the analysis, the narrative work, and the other tools that they developed together in their own work to dismantle the structures that were oppressing communities of color. So when Rinku and Glenn approached us, I was the chair of the board of the Center for Social Inclusion, and both boards were faced with two compelling questions. One, would the sum of the two organizations be stronger and more powerful, or just larger? And would that be a benefit or a deficit for the movement for racial justice? Given the growth and increased power and impact that we've had as the new Race Forward, I can with great relief say that we got it right. As you all know, the new organization has had incredible successes in working with communities, with government entities, and narrative and policy, and tracking data, and developing new ways to do the work of dismantling oppression based on race in America. I can't end without thanking a couple of people, Leanne Hall and Diane Omi, who at the time were the co-chairs of Race Forward when we went through the merger process. Of course, the great leadership and vision of Rinku Sen and Glenn Harris, and the amazing and inspiring work of the staff of Race Forward. So join me in thanking them all, and let's celebrate the next 40 years. Thank you.
The Institutional and Sectoral Change Department at Race Forward has the privilege of housing the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, known as GARE, a network of almost 400 government jurisdictions and agency members. GARE is the largest network of public servants advancing racial equity in government, and members have been bold, helping create the blue wall in defense of immigrants when Trump took office. They have been patient, building racial equity mandates and infrastructure across government for almost 2 decades. This work leading to President Biden taking a playbook from local government and mandating the entire federal government to make similar commitments. The members have also been visionary, using their political imagination to align with communities of color to create a blueprint for the vibrant and just multiracial democracy we all need. And I am thrilled to introduce Carla Bruce, Chief Equity Officer of Fairfax County, Virginia, who has acted with clarity about her mandate, not to change people, but rather to change the conditions in which people are too often forced to live. Carla was a founding steering committee member of GARE, and as one of our founders, represents the best of what government can be. Thank you, Carla.
Good evening, and thank you, Kathy, for that lovely introduction. I can easily say that Fairfax County would not be where we are today on our journey to advance racial and social equity without our relationship to Race Forward, and in particular, our participation in GARE. By no means has the journey been easy, and for sure, it is not complete. But we are on this journey solidly as a part of a network 300 plus jurisdictions strong and growing, created and nurtured by GARE and Race Forward. GARE and Race Forward have brought legitimacy and standards to the growing field of racial equity in local government, providing access to a national framework for change, normalize, organize, operationalize, tools and expertise in areas such as communications and data analysis, technical guidance for addressing structural inequity through planning and policy change in key government functional areas such as planning and development and procurement, and a space to connect with others across our region and around the country. Bold, collaborative, cross-sector work is necessary to address the root causes of the deeply entrenched inequities we face in the communities where we are doing this work, and we will continue to push forward in solidarity with GARE member jurisdictions, discovering the myriad of ways that government can advance racial equity in partnership with our communities. Thank you, Race Forward, for the critical work you have been doing for these past 40 years, and here's to a future of transformative government where racial equity is the norm.
Bright eyes, wise minds, loud mouths, brown skin and deep south, soul so ancient your ancestors made you. Imagination so rampant your present isn't what makes you. Struggle births butterflies. Concrete divided and cities redlined. Dirt, water, and skies polluted. Kids and cages and dreams diluted. Carrying the weight of the earth on your back like a bee to a sunflower. If numbers are infinite, age is a construct that doesn't define your power. Your presence is a present. The future is a home for your passions, hearts radiating with blistering compassion. We are resilient. Lifelines and palms pave way for millions, holding onto dreams for dear life. Future so malleable like silly putty. My future isn't yours, it's mine. It isn't what you made it, it's what we make it. Revolutionary back spines. So join us in this call to change our own lives. My future is our future is a present gifted to our kids.
Hi, I'm Rinku Sen, former Executive Director of Race Forward. 40 years is a mad amount of time. I'm so grateful to everyone who made Race Forward what it is today. I have to name Gary Delgado, founder of the Applied Research Center, thinker of genius thoughts, mentor and friend to hundreds of organizers and leaders across the country. I also recognize Maya Wiley, founder of the Center for Social Inclusion. Maya ignites the true civic spirit in everybody she encounters. Of all the things we did at Race Forward over the years, I'm most proud of the times that we really had to gather our courage and our resolve to pursue the riskiest projects, the ones most likely to fail. Some of those projects did fail, and we learned, but some became vital parts of the racial justice landscape. Drop the I word got the Associated Press to take what had become a racist slur out of their style guide. Shattered Families revealed large numbers of kids in foster care only because their parents had been deported. Colorlines took a huge risk to move from being a print quarterly publication to online and daily. Shoot, we even changed our name after 30 years so that we could walk our own talk, knowing that we can't solve a problem that no one is willing to name. It's a noble history, and I'm definitely proud of it. We haven't ended structural racism yet, but we did put it on the defensive, and we've built a vibrant, powerful community that is committed to the long fight. That community has been my sturdy tree. It's the one I climb when the sea rises and threatens to drown us. We will always be here, fighting to save and free us all.
Founded in 1998, Colorlines founders Bob Wing, a social justice organizer, activist, and writer, and Jeff Chang, an American historian, journalist, and author, were determined to have Colorlines not only show the realities of how race is deeply embedded in the systems and structures of the world in which we are living, but to also be a source of hope. Originally a print publication, in 2010, Colorlines was launched as a daily digital news site and began winning awards and critical acclaim for its deep analysis on the issues of race. Analysis and strategies for building a just, multiracial, multicultural democracy through the power and voices of people of color. During the past year, Colorlines, like many of us, looked at itself and its work to determine whether it was meeting the challenges of these new times in which we are living. This reflection has invigorated a commitment to begin envisioning what a new Colorlines that serves the changing landscape and needs of the 21st century racial justice movement will look like. So we invite you to join us in this envisioning process by giving us your thoughts. Please visit colorlines.com to take a brief survey.
Race Forward and the racial justice movement that seeks to dismantle systemic and structural racism simply could not have thrived without visionary philanthropic partners. And no one has done more to deepen philanthropy's commitment to racial equity and justice than Lori Villarosa, the Executive Director of Philanthropic Initiative for Racial Equity, working for over 3 decades to build a sophisticated understanding of systemic racism in the foundation world. The Philanthropic Initiative for Racial Equity, under Lori's leadership, has been a most valued partner, and it is my pleasure to introduce her this evening. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with everyone tonight virtually, and I'm so honored to be part of this incredible journey and the 40th anniversary of Race Forward, whose own work has completely shaped the work that I've in turn tried to do with the field of philanthropy and racial justice. My engagement with Race Forward starts back from the very beginning of my own career 30 years ago at the Mott Foundation, under the mix of the tutelage and other times prodding, pushing, maybe a little bit of chastising from Gary Delgado, as I was an early program officer trying to really shape and create an area that was focused around institutional racism at a time where it was really difficult in philanthropy to move in that way. And while it was difficult, it was both made more urgent, more important, and importantly, more grounded by the incredible expertise, integrity, and relationships that I had with the folks at then Applied Research Center. And while it wasn't always easy, it was always in deep mutual respect, and for me, with a recognition of the urgency that they were bringing to the work. From that point, as PRE actually started the Philanthropic Initiative for Racial Equity, we went from being partners, in some cases, funder grantee partnership, to the leadership of the Philanthropic Initiative for Racial Equity being reflected by different Race Forward board members, originally Rinku Sen, who was not only a board member, but a deep partner and a thought partner and a partner in work that we created together with Catalytic Change, where we did a deep assessment for racial justice grant making for the field and created tools that funders could use to really advance their understanding of what it took to move this work and how to hold themselves accountable to the work. Rinku was an amazing colleague and side by side, also pushing, also really moving our work significantly. And at the same time, Maya Wiley, then starting Center for Social Inclusion, was a really close colleague, similarly pushing us and, again, walking hand in hand. Moving forward, one of the things that really feels like a valuable grounding for PRE and reflecting of our relationship of recognizing both who should be informing philanthropy, and that is those leaders who are really doing the work around racial justice, but also for within the broader field, some of the things that we knew needed to happen on our side in terms of the racial justice movement, increasing their effectiveness, increasing their coordination, and really maximizing both the resources and the potential for impact. And so to be part of the relationship when Center for Social Inclusion and Race Forward merged into the Race Forward that we see today was a very exciting time both to witness and to perhaps be a sibling in that they were, at the time then, now Glenn Harris and Rinku were both on the pre-board. And I know that some of the relationships and the conversations that got deepened there, both with themselves and with rising racial justice movement leaders from across different generations, was something, again, that informed our work and I hope mutually informed the field. Moving forward to today, we are in a space where we are joined by so many incredible players moving the field of philanthropy, really deepening their own sophistication about the movement work and how to move resources, how to push the field of philanthropy to get resources more directly to those who are leading in unrestricted ways where we can learn and pivot and be shaped by those who have the deeper expertise. And so with that, we are excited for this next chapter. We are continuing to partner together. We are continuing to find ways to grow, and I really look forward to the next decades.
Josh Johnson is a man on a mission to inspire and delight audiences everywhere. Author, performing artist, and speaker with a powerful story to share. And chances are that if you live in New York City, trust me, you may have passed him and not even known it. He has tap danced on trains of New York City to pay for his tuition at Penn State University. Both in New York Times and Reader's Digest have covered his amazing story and hard work, perseverance, and positivity. Josh has been a red carpet correspondent for Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Award. He has appeared on The Ellen Show, Dancing with the Stars. He's in an AT&T Spotlight commercial, and he's also performed at a sold-out 2013-2014 season opener of the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden. What does he not do? And here to thrill us tonight is Josh Johnson.
Once again, my name is Josh Johnson. I got a special friend of mine, Cornelio, here with me, a musician friend. Ladies and gentlemen, tap dancing is all about what you hear, and it's also about what you see, but hopefully you'll hear us and feel us here. Check this out. If I'll go, I'll do a rhythm back and forth with my brother here. If I go. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Here we go.
For 40 years, Race Forward has played a critical role in the movement for racial justice. But we haven't done this alone. Throughout our journey, we have been able to build collective power, resources, and networks alongside organizers, grassroots partners, and others who share our vision of a better world. This work could not have been done without the support of so many thoughtful donors and partners that just continue giving endlessly. And so we want to take this time to thank you all today, our sponsors. Your resources and generous spirit and dedication to racial justice this evening has made everything possible, and we sincerely thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you tuned in to help us celebrate. My name is Dennis Chin, and I'm the Vice President of Narrative, Arts, and Culture here at Race Forward. I've grown with the organization for 10 years, and it's my honor to now serve in this role. I build on the legacy of narrative and cultural strategists here at Race Forward and beyond. I build on the legacy of people at Race Forward, people like Rinku Sen, Maya Wiley, Jeff Chang, and Nayanthara Sen, who have built the foundation in which this work sits. The work of this department is to spark imagination, to shape the world we deserve. It is to use every tool in our toolbox to change collective consciousness in order to birth that world. It is to continue the legacy of meaning-making and storytelling that artists, writers, organizers, and other justice seekers have been doing for centuries. And so it's my honor tonight to share a project called the Butterfly Lab for Immigrant Narrative Strategy. Launched in 2020, the Butterfly Lab builds on Race Forward's historic work in immigration by working with leaders to design, test, and advance narratives that build power and transform policy for migrants, immigrants, and refugees. Over the past year, the Butterfly Lab has incubated prototypes that help move all of us towards a worldview that centers belonging, interdependence, and abundance, not just in immigration, but across all of the issues that we work on. And now I'm pleased to introduce Aisha Shillingford, artist, cultural organizer, and the artistic director of Intelligent Mischief. Aisha is a member of the Butterfly Lab, and I invite her to share about her work in the lab and how it intersects with her practice.
Hi, everyone, and thanks, Dennis. I'm happy to be with you this evening to celebrate Race Forward's 40th anniversary and to share a little bit about the work we're doing at Intelligent Mischief, where we work across art, design, and popular culture to create spaces where Black folks can imagine beautiful futures grounded in Black liberation, Indigenous sovereignty, and decolonial realities. As an immigrant from Trinidad and Tobago, I have always been inspired by the Pan-African and Black Power movements, especially the role Black immigrants and children of immigrants, like Kwame Ture, CLR James, Malcolm X, Shirley Chisholm, and others, have played in cultivating a global movement for liberation in deep relationship with Black and Afro-descendant leaders around the globe. As an immigrant futurist and world builder, I am called to co-create visions of shared futures, where our innate right to move freely across our planet is honored, protected, and celebrated, even as the systems of colonialism, capitalism, and militarism that often catalyze this movement are transformed. This past year, I was honored to be part of the inaugural fellowship cohort of Race Forward's Butterfly Lab for Immigrant Narrative Strategy, along with 15 other brilliant and beautiful people, artists, visionaries, advocates, and organizers. We have spent the last year developing narrative prototypes, stories, albums, games, art, PSAs, TV shows, web series, explainer videos, and more, all grounded in deeply held shared values of abundance, interdependence, belonging, dignity, and freedom for migrants and for all people. Our diverse narrative prototypes are intended to support the broader immigrant justice movement and our colleagues in other areas of the racial justice movement to understand how we can best align our narratives with our vision and short-term goals for just immigration policies. I developed a story, a web series, that invites young Black people to grapple with the complex stories of migration as it pertains to Afro-descendant people, and to explore the ways in which we attempt to reconnect after centuries of separation to create a new shared future of our own making. One of the most powerful things we can do in this moment is to come together across differences to shape a future together. Narrative strategy is so important as we work to shift not just policies, but our very culture. Who we believe we are as a people, how we see ourselves in relation to each other and the planet, and how we treat each other both interpersonally and structurally are deeply shaped by the stories we believe. For too long, the stories we have been told, and even those we repeat within our movements about migration and immigrants, are based on fear, scarcity, disconnection, and violence. We need better, more complex stories, and we need lots of them. And as a movement, we need an aligned set of stories that work in coordination to move more people towards a shared vision of a world based on love, care, connection, and community, and towards bold action in support of migrants of color. We need these stories everywhere. In our popular culture, our children's bedtime stories, in our organizing campaigns, and in our legislative policies, in our street art and art shows and award shows and more.
I hope that you have been as inspired tonight as I have been by all of the phenomenal work being done by so many people to just change the way that this country functions and treats people of color. Things have to change, y'all. It is now my pleasure to bring back to the stage the president of Race Forward and publisher of Colorlines, Glenn Harris. Now, Glenn Harris took the helm of Race Forward back in 2017 after its merger with the Center of Social Inclusion, where he had been president since 2014. Glenn's impressive background includes close to 30 years of working on issues of race and social justice. During this time, he has helped hundreds of organizations across the country center racial equity in their work, including community groups, foundations, and government agencies. Prior to joining this organization, Glenn worked as the manager of the City of Seattle Race and Social Justice Initiative, whose mission is to end institutionalized racism in city government and to promote multiculturalism and full participation by all residents. Compelled by this mission, he has supported the start of similar initiatives in jurisdictions across the country and helped to fund the Government Alliance on Race and Equity, a member network of Race Forward comprised of close to 400 local and regional government jurisdictions across the country. Y'all, please welcome the president of Race Forward and publisher of Colorlines, Glenn Harris.
Wow. Tonight's been amazing. I'm both full and thankful. You know, while you're doing the work, you often don't realize just how much work it really is. You just hope it's meaningful and making a difference. So I want to start tonight by thanking our partners and sponsors, but most of all, our staff, past and present, in all of our iterations. From the Applied Research Center to the Center for Social Inclusion and to Race Forward, for your tireless dedication to this organization and the work that we do, and for your deep and lasting commitment to a movement for racial justice. You know, this work, it isn't easy. It takes a toll on us, all of us, and yet I can't imagine being in the trenches with another group of people. You all are truly amazing, and I have to also, of course, give a big thanks to all of our donors, our sponsors, partners, and friends who are right in the trenches with us, helping us dig deeper, fight harder, and win bigger. Tonight, as I've been watching the event unfold and reflecting on where we are now, voting rights, women's rights, democracy itself are on the line. We're still reeling from and dealing with a pandemic that's taken the lives of more than 650,000 people, mostly Black, Indigenous, and Latinx. The reality, folks, is that we're in a third Reconstruction, with each of our successes resulting in blowback from the same power structure that we've been pushing back against for over 400 years. And yet, I've also been amazed at our audacity to imagine a future we have even yet to see. And it reminded me of something that Gary said years ago. To be an organizer, you have to be optimistic. So yes, our audacity is optimistic, but it's also possible. We've seen it happening bit by bit. But what will it look like, and how will we know when we've actually arrived? I imagine it could look a little bit something like this. Equity and justice will prevail in all of our institutions, systems, and policies, so that people of all races, all gender identities, all sexual orientations, and all abilities will have the same opportunities and outcomes that will allow them to have access to decent housing, air and water, safe communities, accessible and reliable transportation, high-performing schools, and those who've been marginalized will be centered. Their voices will be heard, their needs will be met. We will not only have a seat at the table where decisions are made, but we'll sit at the head of those tables with power, leading the decision-making and the process. Considering where we're at now, it is audacious and optimistic, but it's possible when we leverage our collective resources, our collective brilliance, organizing skills, our power. And each of you are invited to be a part of building this audacious, optimistic, multiracial, multicultural, democratic society. Whether you're an organizer, a researcher, an academic, a policy wonk, or a funder, whatever you can bring to the table is useful. There's room for you and a place for you in this work. In fact, you can start tonight by making a donation to help us continue the work you've heard about and the work we have yet to do. Whatever you can give will make a greater impact than you can imagine. Simply text RF40, RF40 to the number 44-321. I want to close by thanking Gary Delgado for having the heart of an organizer and for not giving in to those who felt we shouldn't talk about systemic racism. Gary's vision of talking about race in this way laid the groundwork for all the accomplishments you've heard about this evening and all the work that will come in the future. The significant gains we've seen on the core issues of racial justice were led by Gary's leadership, by the leadership of Rinku Sen, and the leadership of Maya Wiley at the Center for Social Inclusion. And I work today as I lead the organization. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Rinku. And thank you, Maya. And thanks to all of you for tuning in tonight.
Thank you so much, Glenn, for painting a picture of what this world could really look like if we all just joined forces. We know that it takes all of us to achieve the future of a multiracial, multicultural democracy. And I know that you all have been as inspired as I have been tonight. And so I encourage you all to donate today by texting RF40 to 44321, because it takes a village to create the future that we have all envisioned. I want to give a big thank you to everyone at Race Forward. Thank you for the work that you do. And that's it. Have a wonderful night, folks. I'm going to go back to my apartment. I'm not going back to my parents' basement. I'm grown.
Wake up. Be woke. Be woker than everyone else. Jealous? Good. keep sleeping while I race forward. Liberation, solidarity, emergence, words, important words. Thrive with purpose and power. Don't be a racist. No. Don't be a bigot. Yucky. Be race forward. The past, look back, reflect, learn, and then race forward. No, you're to the side. Nope, not to the left. Nope, still not to the right. Oh, it's forward. You just look at me. Come back. Yes, yeah, yes. Race forward. When you're protesting, race forward. When you're grant writing, race forward. When you're reporting, race forward. 40 years and still a classic. Sense of racial equity, intersectionality, multiracial, multicultural, democracy, justice, and free from exploitation and oppression. Race forward.